Okay guys, this is Brian. Today we got a 695. Customer said it doesn't want to build pressure. They also had an issue with their pump hose, which I've gone ahead and replaced that, and that's not a big deal. You take it off here, take it off there, screw it on, you're done. But they're saying they're not getting any pressure today, so we're going to look at that and see what the problem is there. But we're going to talk about one other thing real quick. This was their hose on the pump itself. They had a hole spring up in the in the hose, and the first thing the guy did to stop it from getting paint everywhere was put his hand on it. Don't do that. He's in the hospital now, and he's having to have surgery on his hand where the high pressure paint shot straight through his hand. And this is when I talk about pressure hazards, this is what I'm talking about. You have a rupture of 3,300 psi. Just let it do what it's going to do. Don't touch it, because that thing's like a laser. It's going to go right through your flesh and end up messing your hand up, your fingers up, or whatever the case may be. That's a lot worse than cleaning up paint off the floor. So before we get started, safety, as always. Watch for high pressure issues like we just mentioned, electrical shock hazards, eye injuries, and things of that nature. Let's just be safe. As I've also said before in my other videos, this is work in shop, so I also try to keep the videos going straight through, but there are times I have to stop in order to help my customers on the phone or in person. And none of what I'm showing you is a substitution for talking to any type of certified shop that specializes in the equipment that you're dealing with, but this is just to simply help you out in a time of need. So I've already got the machine plugged up, and the prime valve tab is broken, but it's in the down position. Turn it on. We should see bubbles. Not there. We should see bubbles coming out of that smaller hose, which would indicate that you're purging the air. And purging air then means you're picking up fluids, and we're not. So we're going to pull this out of the water. Slide it back. First thing we're going to do is take off the inlet housing. We're going to make, and you do it with a hammer. Contrary to what some of the people say on my videos, I wouldn't want you beating on my machine with a hammer. That's literally how you take it. If you try to take this off with a wrench, you will not get it off unless you're a 900-pound gorilla. These tabs are meant to be hit with a hammer. And contrary to some other comments, this is not a carpenter's hammer. This is a ball peen hammer meant for steel work or generally hitting. Carpenter's hammer has a claw. Looks like this. This is a carpenter's hammer, roofing hammer. Well, not a roofing hammer, but similar to a roofing hammer. So if you can't tell the difference in your two hammers, don't try to tell me what I'm doing is wrong. So we removed the the inlet housing off the fluid section here, and we're going to look and make sure there's nothing stuck in the ball. And I can already feel it. It should be coming off now, but it's actually pulling the sleeve out with it, which the sleeve shouldn't come out this easy. That also tells me there could be some wear on the packings, or wear on the sleeve, which I don't feel it. I'm feeling the inside, and I don't really feel the wear on the sleeve, so it just could be on that break point. There's a gasket, an O-ring. We're going to hold that to the side. Now to get this off, you don't want to damage any of this, but to get this off, you can take your hammer down here, not up at the top, and hit it like that. Hit it back and forth to loosen it, because it should be tight in this normally, because there's a gasket in there that holds it in to seal it. So you just want to make sure you don't hit that edge. And this hasn't been off in a while. You can see all the crud on it, but there's a gasket. Let me clean it a little bit. Yeah, now you can see the black gasket right there. That's the gasket that's holding it in snug. So we're going to look inside of this thing. Get a flashlight. And you can see there's some black crud in there. There's some dried up paint. The ball seems to be moving, but there's a bunch of trash in there. So we're going to clean that out. Take your needle nose pliers. You can stick them down inside of either side of the ball. A lot of times you could twist it back and forth. And as you twist it back and forth, when it loosens up, pull up on it, and it will begin to work its way up. Sometimes it's not easy because this thing's constantly under pressure while you're using it, so it kind of presses everything into place. And it's getting there now. All right, I'm gonna dump it out in my hand. Save that to the side so you can see all of the bits and pieces of paint, and every bit of this is not supposed to be in there, so it's lodging, can be lodging in that ball. All of that's trash and making that ball not want to move up and down. We'll clean it off decently. We'll put it to the side. Look inside of the inlet housing, scrape around in there, clean it out, break all that stuff loose. And more. That doesn't help. Now, that's generally cleaned out. So in the bottom of this, here's a piston from the inside of a pump. If you look up in there, this is what you see. There's actually a ball. These are the packings and they're damaged on this one. But if I push this rod up into this hole, you look in that other hole, you can see that ball move up and down. That ball should be free and move up and down just like that. If that ball's stuck down or up, it's not gonna build any pressure. So we're gonna gently stick this up in the hole. Once we bottom out, give it some pressure. And that ball's not moving, okay? So what we're gonna do, we're gonna take this off and we're gonna look at that piston on the inside. Take this hose off on the back side. I'm going to try to do this as quick as we can because this is not overly complicated. It's just a few steps to get to where we need to be. I don't like using the plane. I don't even know why I grabbed that plane. Grab this nut driver. That usually works better. Yeah, we're going to bend this up out of the way a little bit because it's bent down. The nut driver should go straight to the nut, or to the little bolt that's holding this cage on here. We have this one. Put it out of the way. Bend this side up. Just slide that cage up out of the way. Now there's a retaining ring right there. We're going to slide that down. And then we're going to push that pin to the back side. It just fell to the back. We'll see that in a minute. I'm going to loosen this up with the hammer. Unscrew this. Move this out of the way. Unscrew it, unscrew it, unscrew it. That's your packing cup cover. Goes right there, it's just one. We're going to get the retaining ring out. We're going to get that pin out that we just pushed out of there. Saved into the side. So that's what we were talking about, the inside. Alright. So here we are at the vise. We're going to remove the packing nut. Which definitely has not been off in a while. that piston all the way out. And that's what we have on the inside. So we have a heavy buildup of paint on the inside. You can see the packings, you see that line is being distorted up, that the packings are worn. There's your wiper, it's worn as well. So it looks like it might have been worn out and then they just left it with material in it because they couldn't clean it out. So we're going to repack this. We're going to take these off. I'm going to take the packings from the top end of this out, unscrew this, your packings slide off, and we're going to put the new ones on. And then go get the packings. Okay, so we're going to pull packings out of the top end here, just like so. Now there's a male gland in the bottom here. We're going to push up from the bottom side, and what you can do to do that is take your piston, you're going to stick it in the hole, and you're going to wedge it against the bottom of that male gland. And then when it's wedged, you're going to tap it to push up on that male gland. This one's in there for a while. There. Yeah. Can't quite get it with my finger yet. There we go. There's the male gland right there. We're going to clean the inside of this out. Look at that old paint. That's why it was wedged in there so well. Next, we're going to take the outlet housing off. Take the outlet housing off the piston here. Drop my wrench. Trying to speed the process up because this video is going to be longer than I'd like them to be. But not everything is exactly what you want it sometimes. Now while I'm doing all of this, I took my leather packings, the brown ones in the pack, and I'm soaking those in oil, which is what you should do. These can be hard to get off sometimes, so you want to take your pair of pliers or channel locks, grab them, twist. They start to come off. That's the female gland I just took off. All the regular packings will start coming off at that point pretty easily. The male gland here is usually the toughest one. I like to keep a little bit of lacquer thinner with me. It'll act as a lubricant and start softening up any of that paint. And once this gets loose, there's a ball in here. You're going to take that ball. Well, that ball is wedged in there with a bunch of old dry paint. So take my pick around in there. Push it from the top side. There's the ball. Right there. Put that to the side. Clean the rest of that old paint out of there. Now the process of doing this, you don't want to damage your threads or damage this part of the piston here. If you do, you're going to need a new one. So when the male gland is difficult to get stuck, you open up your vise so it's loose, but the shoulder of the male gland hits on your vise. Take your outlet housing, screw it on pretty good. Then what you're going to do is take your hammer, tap. Male gland will slide off. Unscrew your outlet housing, You don't need to be wailing on this. Tapping it's good enough. Get rid of that. And you want to look at your piston. Now this is a Scotch-Brite pad. Put a lacquer thinner on it. Then I take, and I'm not bearing down on this, I'm just using this to clean up this piston pretty good so I can see it better. Now all of this paint here don't mean anything. That's not in the way of the packings or anything. Right in here is where you're looking at cleaning. You want to clean on this shoulder. See, it didn't take much to clean that off. Now you can look at it, make sure there's no damage, no cuts, no scratches, no gouges. Everything looks good. Put it back. Take the small ball, put it in the hole. You're going to take your outlet housing, and in your packing kit, you're going to find your wiper, which is this. And you're also going to find this other washer. And you can put this on either way you want. You can put the washer on first, then the wiper. The wiper goes on groove down, or you could put the washer on top. Either way, it's not going to hurt either way. Either way is acceptable, depending on which manual you look in. It may be other way, one way or the other. You're good. You see that green spot? That's like a thread lock. I always put some extra thread lock on it because you don't want this to unscrew while it's in the system, because it'll elongate the piston. And when it does, it'll bottom out, and then you can damage the piston, you can damage the crank, you can damage a whole lot of stuff. So we're ready to put the piston back together. So we take the male gland, which is rounded on this side, flat here, flat side on, round side down. And you're going to take your blue or white, depending on where you bought your packings at. Put that on first so that the groove side is down the length of the piston. That means the groove side is sitting on the rounded side of the male gland. Then you put your leather packing on the same way, groove side down, go to blue, or your Teflon, and black, or your leather, and back to your blue again. And you're going to take your female gland, which has got the groove sits on the curved side of the packing. Put it on, screw this on. Tighten it up. We're tight. I'm going to set this to the side. Our sleeve is actually good. On the inside, I feel it. Everything's nice and smooth. We're going to take this O-ring right here off because we're going to replace it with a new one. Sometimes they can be hard to get off. There we go. Make sure the groove's good and clean. Take one of these white O-rings. I'm going to put it on. And this packing kit will come with two. One goes here, one goes here. But we don't want to put this one on yet. Now we're going to take our piston and our sleeve. We're going to go ahead and put them back together because we'll keep them all together, keep them safe. Tap it down. That's it. That's all you got to do. Leave it just like this. Put it out of the way until you're ready to put it back together. The other O-ring is going to go in here, but we're not going to do that till we're just ready to put it all together because it might fall out. Alright, so now we're going to take, that's your female gland, which is what goes on top. This is your male gland, shoulder, rounded on top. So the shoulder goes down, and the rounded section faces up. Press it all the way down, make sure it's in place. Groove side, round side, groove side down. Same thing with the leather packing. Press it down, down, down. You're making a sandwich here. There's another piece of bread. It's blue. It's another piece of your lunch meat. You're going to finish it off, top it off with another piece of bread. And then there's your female gland, groove side down. And you take your packing nut That's this guy right here. Comes with a new packing nut cover. It presses down, fits into a groove. It can be a bit of a pain sometimes. It's harder plastic, trying to force it down into that groove. I'm sorry if I'm not in the camera. It's hard to get that leverage just right with your hands sitting out in front of you. Sometimes you have to take the last little bit, press it in, and walk the dog. There, now it's on. Now you're going to take your packing nut, hand tight. We'll flip it upside down, put it back in. And the last big white O-ring goes all the way down to the bottom. There's a small shoulder in there that it sits on. And you're going to take your sleeve and your piston. I like to put anti-seize inside. That way the next time I go to take this out, it's not bound in there with old paint or just rust. And you're going to take this like that. You're going to feed it all the way through the hole. When you feed it through the hole, you'll be able to push it in by hand. You're going to flip it back around. You're going to tighten this up. You're not going to over tighten it. There's a gasket right there. If it starts to swell out too wide, that is hitting the thread or wider than the threads, then you know you've tightened it up too much. They're going to replace this old ball with the new ball that comes with the kit. Put that in. I'm going to take the seat. We're going to put it in just like this, not like that. Just make sure it don't flip over on the inside. Put it in. Press it down. It's in. Screw this all back together. Tight. Going back to the machine. We're back. Before we screw this on, we're going to put the retaining ring on it. And we're going to tap this piston down a little bit. We don't need it up quite that high, because if it's too long, you're going to hit the bottom of your slider up here. Not sure if you can even see where I'm pointing at here. So your piston goes up, it can bottom out inside of the slider here before you're even getting any threads on the cylinder. So you tap it down, it's a little short, begin screwing it on. And don't go crazy with this. You don't need to, when you're putting this on, you don't want to damage these fine threads on the, you're not going to damage them here. You're going to damage them here if you're not careful. So don't cross thread it. Take your time. Just screw it in. Now if you bottom out or whatever before your piston lines up with the holes here, just reach in with something, because I like to have that in place, the pin in place before I bottom out. Just work that hole in there and line it up. You're going to wedge up on it, pull that piston up is what you're doing. Now you're going to take your pin, place it in the hole. Once it's lined up, get in there. Flip it around. Take a punch. Your hammer. Tap it in. Sometimes it's lining up good, sometimes it's not. Spin it around one more line. There we go. Now we're lined up. Put it in place. We're going to take our retaining ring. We're going to ride it back up into that groove to hold that pin. If you don't put that in, that pin can work its way out. When it does, it can hit the top of that yoke and shatter it. And you're replacing all of this. Now we're going to put our hose back on the back side. And this new hose is a little bit tight. tighten that hose up. I'm going to tighten that lock nut up right there. Hand tight. Tight. There's a little bit of oil I'm going to put on that piston right there. Fill up that packing nut cup. Slide these back up. Put these back in place. Cover up this guard. I put this guard back in place. Like I've mentioned before, these are no substitute for taking this to a shop. Certified shop. Just trying to help you out in a bind. I don't want to see you get hurt. There are things as a certified shop we're going to look at other than what we're actually focusing on primarily, which is the repack. Tighten your locking nut back up. Take your carpenter's hammer. Tighten it up. You want it tight. Same thing with this guy. A wrench is not going to tighten that up enough. It'll tighten it up enough for you to get on the job, and that O-ring will blow out, and you'll have paint everywhere. I'll plug the machine back in. Turn it on. Let's see if we get any bubbles. No bubbles. So I got sidetracked what I was doing. What I prefer to do before I put this on, back off again, because everything is dry at the moment. I'll put some oil in here so that lower ball is dry. You get a good seal on it. Now let's keep our fingers crossed, see what we get this time. Came unplugged. Come on. Plug keeps wanting to come loose here. I'll try holding it. Come on, plug. Give me 1 second. Let me fix this plug. Okay. Try it again. I got the plug fixed so it shouldn't come loose. So turn it on, see if we get bubbles. That's definitely bubbles. Turn the prime valve. Valve off. Yeah, there's a big old gush coming out of there. We're going to open the prime valve easily. So we got pressure. I'm going to turn it all the way up. Everything's good. Pressure's holding. That's normal. And good. Nothing. Alright, so there we go. That's basically how to find out if why your machine's not building pressure when you got bad packings. If you got any questions or comments, drop them below. If you got a request for some type of particular repair on any kind of machine, I'll see what I can do to fix you up. If you got any feedback, would be great as well. I get tied up in this and then I forget what somebody might want to actually see. But yeah, be safe. We'll talk to you later.